Hello everyone, good day. So our assigned topic is all about the language curriculum in the K-12 program. It is presented by Babasol Ibserant M and Belina Sheila May. So let's start about the domains of literacy and the competences to be developed in each domain. So the importance of learning literacy development as a future educator, how we are using domains to build student knowledge and access to high-level texts. So a child's early years in school are critical to building their literacy skills so that they are prepared for greater success as they grow. It is intentionally engage students in developing vocabulary acquisition, background knowledge, and listening and reading stamina. Why is it so important? It is because students need to continuously build upon what they know and have they learned to successfully read and understand high-level texts, which is critical to their literacy development. So the domains of the literacy in the K-12 languages curriculum are oral languages, phonological awareness, book and print orientation, alphabet knowledge, word recognition, fluency, spelling, handwriting, composing, grammar awareness, vocabulary, listening and reading comprehension, and lastly is the attitude toward language, literature, and literacy. So now let's start about our first domain, which is the oral language. Have sufficient facility in English to understand spoken discourse and to talk and interact with others about personal experiences and texts, listen to or read. So oral language, sometimes it is called spoken language. So it includes speaking and listening, the ways that humans communicate with one another. So it is also a skills provide the foundation for word reading and comprehension. So they are at the heart of listening and reading comprehension, serving as the predictor for both. Next is the phonological skills. Be able to demonstrate phonological awareness at the levels of the syllable and the phoneme. So phonological skills or the ability to work with sounds in spoken language sets the stage for decoding, blending, and ultimately word reading. So it is made up of a group of skills. For examples include being able to identify words that rhyme, counting the numbers of syllables in a name, recognizing alteration, segmenting a sentence into words, and identifying the syllables in a word. Next is the alphabet knowledge. Recognize name and sound out all the upper and lowercase letters of the alphabet. So there are a lot of strategies we can teach to the student. What are the alphabet letters? Like we can introduce it by singing, writing the alphabet letters, or maybe just let the student make letters from nature, like forming letter A on the dried leaves, or even letter B using the stones. So by this, they could learn the ABCs as well as they will become creative learners. So our next domain is the phonics and word recognition. Use sight word recognition or phonic analysis is to read and understand words in English that contain complex letter combination, affixes, and constructions. So phonics instruction helps beginning readers learn common letter sound, correspondence, and strategies for sounding out letters and blending sounds into words. So for example, A is for apple, B is for boy, S for cat, D is a dog. So beginning readers will know a limited number of or letter relationships, so mainly beginning and ending sounds that they can apply to an unfamiliar word. So as a teacher, we will want to guide them as they attempt to decode unfamiliar words. So let's start with the first letter or letters. So in case of diagraphs, CH, SH, IE, EA, etc. and blends ST, BL, DR, etc. have the child sound out the letters. As needed, have the child sound out the letters at the end and in the middle of an unfamiliar word. So for example, if the child correctly sounds out the beginning letter and still does not know the word, have him or her sound out the ending letters. So if a child has the beginning and ending sounds right but mispronounces the middle sound, so point to or isolate the middle letters and ask him or her what sounds the letters make. So after the sounding out the word, have the child blend the sounds together and try to say the word. So ask her, him, does the word make sense in the sentence? Have a child look have a child look in the picture. So this is a good strategy to confirm whether a word makes sense. So for example, if they read cat instead of cow for the word cow, you can ask them to look at the picture and think about whether cat makes sense. So ask her or him, are there people, objects, or actions in the picture that might make sense in the sentence? So a child can use a combination of sounding out words and using pictures clues to confirm. The following samples dialogue between the teacher and child uses bananas as the unfamiliar word and demonstrates how to apply this approach. So our next domain is the fluency. Read aloud grade level text effortlessly, without hesitation and with proper expression. So reading fluency is a child's ability to read a book or other text accurately, so with reasonable speed and with appropriate expression. A fluent reader doesn't have to stop and decode each word and can focus attention on what the story or text means. So fluency is a bridge between decoding words and understanding what has been read. So now let's proceed to our next domain, which is spelling. Spell words with two or more syllables using phonics, semantic, and morphemic knowledge. So learning to spell helps a child to develop a strong connection between the letters and their sounds, and learning high frequency sight words will assist a child in both their reading and writing. So to help students become confident spellers, we need to build their understanding of phonology, orthography, morphology, and etymology, grow their lexical stores, and develop efficient memory and retrieval techniques. Next is writing and composition. Express their ideas effectively in formal and informal compositions to fulfill their own purposes for writing. So, to successfully compose written works, children must engage in a complex thought processes and utilize critical thinking skills. Because this task requires much abstract thinking, so teaching composition to students present a challenge, increase the likelihood of success in teaching this skill to children by breaking down the task of writing into manageable and teachable parts. So educate students on how to move through the process required creating a finished written work. So our next domain is handwriting. So write legibly in cursive writing. So teaching handwriting to kindergarten is much hard but challenging. So as a teachers, we need to have the power of patience, perseverance, and ability to bend at the waist for a long period of time. So there are also a lot of strategies on how to teach handwriting to the students. One of these is teach letter formation in a context. So we have to kill two birds with one stone. So kindergarten students need to be taught on how to form their letters. So this can be done within the context of writing a sentence. So often when students practice writing letters in isolation, they have trouble transferring handwriting skills to sentence writing. So teach capitalization, spacing, and at the end of punctuation while demonstrating the proper letter formation. So our next domain is the grammar awareness. Demonstrate grammatical awareness by being able to read, speak, and write correctly. So other one is communicate effectively in oral and written forms, so using the correct grammatical structure of English. So for example, use spaces between words, write from left to right or top to bottom, identify sentence and word by name, identify the period, question mark, and exclamation points to end sentences, capitalize the first word in a sentence, and etc. Vocabulary. Acquire, study, and use English vocabulary words appropriately in relevant contexts. So, beginning readers use knowledge about words to help them make sense of what they're reading. So, the more words a reader knows, the more they are able to comprehend what they're reading or listening to. So kindergartens are learning lots and lots of new words. So in fact, reading and talking about words is one of the best ways to build a kids' vocabulary. But you'll also notice that they have several ways to figure out the meaning of those new words, like using pictures or other text as clues. So, for example, ang alibangbang kay naay duha ka antena sa ulo ug naay mabulukon nga mga pako. So then we need to let them see the picture of a butterfly. So the benefits of that is that kindergartens learn new words from everything they read and see. Our next domain is the listening and reading comprehension. Activates prior knowledge conceptually related to text and establishes a purpose for listening and reading. Be self-aware as they discuss and analyze text to create new meanings and modify old knowledge. Responds to literary text through the appreciation of the literary devices and an understanding of literary devices and an understanding of story grammar. Recalls locates information from expository text and uses this information for discussion or written production. So in this we need to have an activity wherein learners tell or share what he or she learned from what he or she read. Our next domain is the attitude towards language, literacy, and literature. Demonstrate a love for reading stories and confidence in performing literacy-related activities or tasks. So, in this domain, it is very important to help and impart to the pupils or students how literacy is significant and make them love to read and write and to listen. So the more often children read and write, the more likely they are to become independent, competent readers and writers. So developing and maintaining positive attitudes about reading and writing requires constant vigilance. Reading and writing must be seen by the child as a pleasurable, worthwhile experience. So our last domain is the study skills. Chooses and utilizes discrete techniques, general or specific, and applies them to all or most fields of study. So, for example of this domain is teach students to make their own study guides. So, many students will sit down with their book when it is time to study, read it through and call it good. If you give them a unit study guide, they do the same. So unfortunately, as well as you know, this does not mean that information has been absorbed. So instead, carve out a little time to teach your students how to make a study guide on their own. So this begins with teaching them how to pick out important information from the text or in our classroom lectures. So once they can pick out these tidbits, teach them how to write questions that can be used to study. So with these tools, your students can quiz themselves and those will be prepared for their tests. So that's the end of our topic and the rest will be further discussed by Ms. Belina.
Good day, everyone. I am Shalami Belena, and this is the continuation of our report, Bridging Among Languages. So, before we proceed, let us give first the definition of bridging. When we say bridging, it is the period during the unit where the focus is on instructing students on how to transfer what they have learned from one language to another. So we have here mother tongue, Filipino, and English. Question: what is mother tongue? Okay, so mother tongue is the first language or the native language of a person used. Next is Filipino, so this is also known as the second language where a person learns in order to communicate by the native speaker of that language. Basically, first language is like an instinct which is triggered by birth and developed with the experience of being exposed to it. So, well, the second language is a personal choice of a person. And last is the English language, or it is also called international or global language. Instructional moment when teachers is first is to bring the language together and last is to transfer. Okay. So our knowledge and understanding of language 1 impact our understanding of language 2. So we can transfer grammar, vocabulary, syntax, semantics, spelling, morphology, pronunciation, structure, and culture to the language 2. Language transfer explains different accents and what mistakes people make. So also it can predict how quickly we can acquire a second language, taking into account similarities and differences between the two languages. Next is similarities and differences among languages. In the phonology, morphology, syntax, and pragmatics, language can differ in many ways. So they may use different sounds, they may make words in different ways, they may put words together to form a sentence in different ways. Next is translanguaging. So we have to identify what is translanguaging. So it occurs during the bridge or whenever students and teachers make connections among the languages. Translanguaging or bridging comes from a multilingual perspective of students and teaching. So when bilingual students translanguage, they creatively use linguistic features and language modes to make meaning that is socially categorized as belonging to one or another language. Tips on Teaching Literacy to Elementary Students by Richard Allington. Okay, so there is no magic bullet when it comes to teaching literacy. But we already know that a good teacher is more effective than any one program or strategy. So the following are the 6 traits for teaching literacy well. Number 1, time. So spend more time on reading and writing. Writing every day can benefit everyone, not only for the writers. It improves students' memory, builds vocabulary, and refine their communication skills. Number two is text. So have lots of book for children to read for them to be able to choose what they like to read. So reading a variety of genres helps students learn text structure and language that they can transfer to their own writing. Number three is teach. Okay, actively teach useful strategies. To have an active and participative students, teachers should be wise enough to find a strategy that fits the preferences of his or her students' way of learning. Number four, let students talk about how and what they have learning. So to see if they have really understood what they have read and to express their own understanding about the text. Number five is task. Give students longer assignments to build stamina instead of short tasks. And last is number six, which is test. So make sure to assess children during the project and not just on a one-time test. So giving an assessment help teacher to know what level of knowledge do his or her students have, and by that he or she can improve his or her way of learning, and if she or he finds there's something wrong with the scores of his or her students. Practical strategies for teaching reading. So first is to dedicate. Dedicate classroom time for reading every single day. So reading promotes brain development and imagination, develops language and emotions, strengthens relationship. Sometimes you can read, sometimes you can look at picture books, sing songs, or tell stories from your culture. Next is allow children to self-select their books. Third is ensure students have a plan for what they will be reading and why. And last is teach children that reading preferences are okay, but they should also explore new topics, just like what I have said earlier. Reading a variety of genres helps students learn text structures and language that they can transfer to their own writing. Next slide, we have here practical strategies for teaching writing. So effective writing instruction results in children who can produce clear, understandable writing for different purposes. Next is teachers must explain the purpose for writing and how to achieve it. And next is teachers who are pursuing a master's degree in literacy can learn about the three main forms of writing. So these are informative, narrative, and persuasive. Teachers who facilitate learning through a love of literature and writing can create a joyful experience for children early on. So teachers and students use spoken and written language to communicate with each other, to present tasks, engage in learning processes, present academic content, assess learning, display knowledge and skill, and build classroom life. In addition, much of what students learn is language. They learn to read and write, and they learn to discourse of academic disciplines, which sometimes called academic languages and literacies. With regard to written language, classrooms for children provide opportunities to learn alphabetic symbols, graphophonemic relationship, which are letters and sounds relationship, basic sight vocabulary, and comprehension strategies. Young children may also have opportunities to learn how to express themselves through written language, including opportunities to form letters, words, sentences, and text structures, and opportunities to learn how to put together a written story. Last is, what skills do students learn through reading literature? Okay, so it improves vocabulary, organizational skills, ability to read, comprehend, analyze text, and can also provide people with important historical perspective, encourage sympathy for other human beings, understanding of the other cultures. That's all for today. Thank you and have a good day.